I'm not interested in photo ops.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination of garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite is designed to strengthen the heart and arteries and help the body heal itself. Doctors are not able to explain the improvements they are seeing in their patients' health who are taking Extendivite. People who once needed more pills are now taking less and getting better. Due to the unexplainable improvements in their patients' health, more doctors are calling to order Extendivite for themselves. Help Extendivite make your doctor a believer. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, July 5th, 2018. Sure, happy it's Thursday. Sure, happy it's Thursday. Sure, happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in with your comments and questions. A reminder that today, in our third hour, our guest will be Daisy Luther from The Organic Prepper, and we're going to be talking about this sudden incivility bordering on violence, harassment of people in public, and where is it going? Could it really turn into a new civil war? And speaking of the incivility in public, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Scott Pruitt, has resigned. And of course, you know, this is only going to encourage those liberal harassers. We got one, keep going. But the reality is that Scott had a lot of stuff chasing him around. And even though Donald Trump gave him a nice little send-off on Twitter about he's done a great job, blah, 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 there are like a dozen open investigations into his behavior. One of them is he asked his aides to find a $200,000 a year job for his wife, which is not what they're paid to do. And apparently in another incident, he was asking his aides to pay for hotel rooms on their personal credit cards, which then begs the question, what was Scott Pruitt doing at those hotels where he did not want an official paper trail? And this is the former Attorney General of Oklahoma who's behaving like this. Another little reminder of just how crooked and corrupt they are all. Now, as you know, the liberal whiners are out there, and they've gone over the edge, led by Maxine Waters. And there are a bunch of liberals who, lemming-like, are following her off the edge of the cliff. And Trump's ratings have soared 5 points in the latest IBD tip poll. And oddly enough, his numbers are up 10 points with Hispanics. The legal Hispanic citizens of this country are tired of being conflated with the illegals. It's making their lives very difficult. They're getting shouted at, they're getting harassed, and they have every right to be here. So they're fully on board with Trump toughening up the immigration. And so if the Democrats thought they were going to run on this in November, it has backfired horribly. And article over in the Washington Times, the abolish ICE narrative is turning into a disaster for Democrats. 69% of Americans want strong borders. They want ICE. And of course, the Democrats are now clustering around Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who defeated Joe Crowley in the New York primary, and she's an open borders advocate. So now the Democrats are saying she's the new face of the Democratic Party. But it's falling on deaf ears. They're not getting a lot of traction. Now, she may win the midterm election. She may get to Congress. But the agenda itself is falling apart. And according to the latest Reuters poll, millennials are leaving the Democratic Party in droves, because they're looking at how the Democrats are behaving. The Democratic lights, the Maxine Waters, the Dianne Feinsteins. And it's not very attractive. And of course, other Democratic leaders are out there trying to delink the party, saying, well, they don't really represent us. But the young white Americans aren't seeing it that way. And they are shifting solidly towards the GOP, which is why the Democrats are desperate to flood this country with illegal immigrants before November. Because otherwise, they're going to get a clubbing. They're going to feel like baby seals after that election is over. Now, there's a memo that has surfaced and from the FBI, and it actually went out telling FBI agents that they had the authority to bend or suspend the law in their hunt for terrorists and criminals. And the FBI has now taken this down from their counterterrorism training manual and said, yeah, it was a little irregular. But no, at one point, the FBI were being taught they were above the law. And of course, with training like that, is it any wonder you have people like Peter Strzok coming on out and saying, we can't take the chance that Trump will be the president. We're going to stop him. That's very dangerous when you have an intelligence agency or any kind of a police force that sees itself as above the law. And of course, they aren't really. That's a lot of what this IG investigation's been about. Acting like they're above the law. So, now the highest ranking lawyer in the Justice Department and the top aide to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, Scott Schools, is stepping down from his position. And Scott Schools helps Rosenstein oversee the ever-expanding Mueller witch hunt. Now, Scott has spent 27 years in the Department of Justice and will be replaced on an acting basis by Bradley Weinsheimer, who currently works in the National Security Unit. This is coming from NPR. Now, is he just tired? Is he getting ready to retire? Or does he know that something's about to break and he wants to get clear of the shrapnel zone, as it were? We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And people's attention are turning to Rosenstein and saying, what happens next? If he won't release the Clinton documents, if he refuses to comply with the request of Republican lawmakers to release documents about why Special Counsel Robert Mueller began investigating the alleged Russian collusion in the 2016 election, he could be held in contempt. He could be impeached. So there's a lot of game playing that's getting ready to go on. And the fact that they're having these discussions, I think, is a signal that Rod Rosenstein is going to defy Congress and say, no, you're not allowed to have these. This is too important. So, originally, Sessions and Rosenstein and Mueller were out there looking for evidence of Trump's wrongdoing. Now it seems they're obsessed trying to bury the evidence of their wrongdoing. That's what's going on over here. Now, as you know, we're coming up on the NATO summit, and Trump is sticking to his theme that other nations in the alliance have to carry their fair share. And in his speech to NATO, Trump is basically going to tell them the U.S. cannot be the world's piggy bank. And he's absolutely right about that, because we've run out of pennies. But he's going to be calling on the other nations to significantly increase military expenditure. to counter Russian aggression. Still on that one. Okay, now getting on over to the war zones. FSA militants have surrendered their heavy weapons to the Syrian army. And this is in the town of Basra al-Sham in Daraa. According to photos and videos, the group has handed over 2 battle tanks, 2 BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles, a 37mm automatic air defense gun, M1939, a 160mm mortar cannon, and at least 6 U.S.-made TOW anti-tank missile launchers. Besides this, the Syrian Arab Army has recovered a notable number of mortars, ammunition, and light weapons. Now, according to Syrian government sources, the Free Syria's army, Shabab al-Sunnah, will continue handing over weapons in the upcoming days. Most of its members have chosen to settle their legal status and to join the Syrian Arab Army to combat ISIS and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So they're switching sides. Kind of like the Italians in World War II. Now, Russia has started fresh talks with militants to try and finally end all the fighting in southern Syria. And I would think that they would be open to talks because at this point it is clear they are losing. It's clear the United States has abandoned them. And so it's time to bring this thing to an end. And once again, Putin is showing that he is a global statesman interested in peace. Now, earlier in the week, I reported that there had been a major development where Bashar al-Assad had cut some kind of a deal with the Kurds, where they were going to stop fighting each other. And we're getting some more details on that. Basically, the Kurdish forces are joining with Syria to push Turkey out of northern Syria, where the Turks have been extraordinarily rude to the Kurdish people. And after that's done, I would expect that probably Assad is going to say, just settle down there, make your lives there, we are going to leave you alone. Now, at some point, the issue of autonomy will probably come up, but I think that's going to be a while down the road because everybody's just tired of the fighting. They want this thing to be over. Now, Iran has issued a major threat that they will shut down the Strait of Hormuz if the United States tries to force the rest of the world to stop buying Iranian oil. And Iran is basically saying, if that happens, nobody will be selling any oil from the Middle East anywhere. Now, it's very, very tough talk, and I'm afraid it's a little bit of chest thumping. The U.S., of course, is vowing to keep the Gulf Waterway open. And unfortunately, in terms of naval forces, the U.S. has the advantage, unless Iran has got something secret that we don't know about. On the other hand, the Yemenites did surprise the Saudis with that rocket that hit their landing ship, caused them to skedaddle away. Iran is also saying that if the Iran nuclear deal is shut down, I mean, Trump's pulled out of it. Trump is trying to get all the other members to pull out of it. They're still saying they want to work with Iran to keep it going, but there's a lot of pressure being put on them. If the deal falls apart, Iran is saying they may alter their cooperation level with the IAEA. Now, it's a very subtle piece of business. Under the terms of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Iran is obligated to allow the IAEA into certain areas like the centrifuges, the power stations, for inspections. As a condition of the Iran nuclear deal, the IAEA was given much wider access into Iran. And Iran is saying that if the Iran nuclear deal ends, they're going to roll the IAEA's access back to what is mandated under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Meanwhile, the United States and the Saudis are apparently using the MKO terrorists as a tool against Iran. There's a lot of discord and upset going on in Iran right now. We know that there is a U.S. and Israeli working group dedicated to the overthrow of the Iranian government. It's a replay of 1953. It's a replay of 2009. And there are agent provocateurs on the ground, and apparently these MKO terrorists are some of them. And basically, the MKO has been used against Iran since the 1979 revolution. They've carried out several terror attacks, killing senior officials in Iran. Yet the West, which says cultism is wrong and claims to be against terror, supports this group officially. Getting on over to Israel, Israel has issued a warning that any Syrian troops in the Golan buffer zone will be considered legitimate targets and fired upon by Israel. And Israel is calling for the UN ceasefire to be upheld, which is kind of a joke when you look at how many UN resolutions Israel has defied. I mean, the UN General Assembly has passed all kinds of resolutions criticizing Israel for trying to take Jerusalem, for the treatment of the Palestinians, and Israel's attitude is, we don't care what the UN thinks. And now here they are saying, we call on the UN to keep the ceasefire going. Talk about chutzpah here. Over in Gaza, there's been another Palestinian teenager succumb to wounds he received by being shot by the Israeli snipers at the Gaza Strip. Mahmoud al-Garabli, 16 years old, died after being injured in the head east of Gaza City all the way back on May 14th. He's apparently been struggling all this time, and finally it just worked on out. Now, protests along the Gaza fence since March 30 have, of course, led to this massacre by Israeli forces. 135 Palestinians, including 14 children, have been killed. 15,000 Palestinians have also sustained injuries, many of them major, requiring amputation. Now, Israel is still out there saying that they have to shoot at the Gazans because the Gazans are throwing rocks at them. There's only one problem with that. The fortified positions the Israelis are firing from are twice as far away from the fence as anybody could throw a rock. The rocks, and none of the IDF snipers have been hit by a rock, or a kite, or a balloon, or a paper airplane, or a spitball. Not one. The violence is totally, totally one way. Now, British journalist Robert Carter has a somewhat different attitude on what's going on in the Middle East, and he says the obvious U.S. bias toward Israel, coupled with the move of the embassy to Jerusalem and the absolute apparent disdain for the Palestinians, is triggering the collapse of U.S. hegemony over the Middle East. And he's saying the evident favoritism towards Israel practiced by the administration will cause the United States to lose its ability to easily manipulate and convince Muslim powers to follow American strategies going forward. And I agree with him. Now is not the time for the United States to be buddying up shoulder to shoulder with Israel, because Israel just crossed a line with the Bloody Monday massacre, which I like to equate to the British Amritsar massacre, which historians now view as the point at which British control over India began to decline. And I think that's what's happening here. Israel just went one step too far. They've committed an atrocity. And while the British colonial government in India did hold a trial and hold the British officers to account, Israel's continued attitude is, we haven't done anything wrong. We're the victims here. We're going to go on shooting the bullets. So they're proving themselves to be unrepentant in the eyes of the world. And we're seeing BDS get a lot of support. Apparently, Israeli officials are now considered persona non grata in Spain. We've reached the point where all of Israel's propaganda and media control and economic control and subversion of our governments fails to keep the world from seeing what Israel is, how it behaves, and what it does. And that's what we're criticizing. While they're out there screaming anti-Semites and Jew hate, we're criticizing behaviors. Not their religion, not their ethnicity, not their clothing. We're not saying their dog is ugly or anything like that. We're criticizing their behavior, which is our right under that First Amendment. Now, an Israeli parliamentary committee has urged the government of Israel to accelerate the so-called legalization of settlement outposts in the occupied West Bank. Now, this is a little bit of arrogance where Israel's government claims the authority to legalize something which is illegal under international law. But the Knesset Internal Affairs Committee accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of delaying work on the authorization of 70 West Bank settler outposts for over a year, demanded he speed up the process. Well, Benny's been a little bit busy. He's trying to get himself out of those corruption indictments. But again, Israel's just grabbing the land left and right. And the U.S. favoritism is trying to sell this normalization of Israel's colonial apartheid behavior. And finally, Israelis have begun the demolition of the Palestinian neighborhood of Khan al-Ahmar near East Jerusalem. And 15 people were wounded, 35 arrested. The bulldozers are at it already. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We will not go in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go to the telephones now to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, Mike, I love the articles that you talked about with that I read on what really happened about one. It was Israel is now squealing for the UN to come in and enforce a ceasefire so that nobody would encroach on their buffer zones, which, by the way, are all in Syria.
Yes.
They're all in Syrian owned territory. And now they're squealing. And I wanted to point out, because a lot of people don't know this, Mike, you might not even know this, but they have murdered UN people going way back to a guy named Count Foch Bernadette, who was in 1947 or 6 or something, was a UN special envoy to the Middle East. This is a guy, by the way, he was a Swedish nobleman who had helped negotiate the release of thousands, tens of thousands of Jews from Himmler at the end of the war. But yet he was too even-handed in the negotiations with the Palestinians, and so the Stern Gang murdered the guy, and he was murdered. The Stern Gang, by the way, included two of its leaders were Yitzhak Shamir and Menachem Begin, who then became prime ministers of Israel. I mean, they were founded on terror. The second thing is that I love the fact there's another article you had that was bending the Israel's bending to Russia's will.
Yes.
And how now since Syria and Russia have backed ISIS and all the Israeli and American-backed terrorists almost up to the Israeli border, there's nowhere for them to go, and they won't allow them to come back, so they're going to have to exit through Israel.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to point out the contrast between what works with Israel. We try to get them to do things, and we give them everything, billions of dollars, and their fifth column runs the country, and yet we can't get them to do anything. But the only thing that works with them, frankly, is grabbing them by their necks and threatening to punch their lights out. And internationally, I'm saying,
yeah.
And it's working for the Russians, and now they're bending to the will. So it's interesting.
It is very much interesting, but it does look like Putin is going to settle the situation in Syria down, and Israel's just going to have to go along with that, because if Israel keeps firing missiles into Syria after the war is functionally over, then the verdict of world opinion is going to be Israel's trying to start another war with Syria. And at that point, who knows what would actually happen. But
of course, but everybody knows that they're doing that already, Mike. I mean, they've been trying to start a war with Syria and get rid of Assad and actually get us to fight their war. Now they're panicked because they may even have to fight it themselves. They don't want that. That's the UN squealing. But everybody in the world knows they've been trying to start a war, get a war started. Just let's you and him fight, which is their foreign policy.
Yes. Very much so. They want the U.S. to fight their wars for them, pay for them, and but again, it looks like Israel is basically backing off, and maybe that's why they're talking tough about shooting Syrian troops in the buffer zones, which you are correct to point out is actually still technically Syrian territory. Is Israel's trying to thump on its chest and recover some of its face.
Hey, Mike, another one was that working group that is between Israel and the United States is trying to gin up a war with Syria, with Iran.
Yep.
I think you talked about it earlier. That's exactly what they did with the Office of Special Plans. You remember that?
Yes, I remember that. And that was tied in directly to Israel as well here. They're not trying to get a war with Iran yet. They're trying to basically overthrow the government like they did in 1953 and tried to do in 2009. And I don't think it's going to work. And after that, yes, they'll gin up some reason for a war. And it's amazing that they're still out there pushing this war agenda when so many of these wars have gone so badly. We have a new government forming in Iraq that is not going to be subservient to the United States. It's going to be under Muqtada al-Sadr. We have all these nations in the Middle East. They see what the United States is doing to them, and they're not going to be agreeable. I mean, the reason there's all that bloodshed in Yemen, they're trying to kick out their U.S. puppet ruler, and same thing in Libya. So we're stuck in Afghanistan. We're stuck in Iraq. We're mired all across Africa. Nobody knows really where. Now is not the time to be pushing forward with more wars, because at some point, you're going to run out of soldiers. You're going to run out of bullets and ammunition. There was an article that we had on our website today where apparently Donald Trump's comment about sending tanks to Venezuela was not an off-the-cuff remark. He's seriously talking to his White House staff about the advisability of militarily going into Venezuela. All right, we have to take another break for commercials. Peter, stay on the line. I want to come back to you after these words from our sponsors.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're still talking with Peter in Los Angeles, and we're talking about the Middle East. And it is in a state of chaos. And it's all at the instigation of the United States, both for its own purposes and for those of Israel, which wants all regional rivals smashed up. That was the whole point of going into Iraq, along with the fact that Iraq was selling their oil for the euro. That's why they want to go into Iran. And I don't know why the Saudis are cozying up to Israel, because somewhere down on that list of large, powerful Middle Eastern nations to be broken up into little, tiny, easy to push around bits, Saudi Arabia's got to be there as well.
Well, Mike, if I can point out a couple things. It's clear that the only people pushing for the end of the P5+1 have been the Israelis and their American Fifth Column. And all the sanctions that we've heaped on Iran, which is now coming back with these enormously higher and getting way higher oil prices, that affects everything. Our consumer price index is going through the roof for inflation because of that. It's affecting everything that we do. And this is a direct response to the costs of the wars and the cost of these sanctions that we're doing at the behest of Israel. And I got one more point, and that is to make, a couple of weeks ago, the United States, at Israel's instigation, resigned from the UN Human Rights Watch. You remember that?
Yes.
And now they got us to, because it's not with our interest to be off that. We should be in there too. Why shouldn't we have a voice on that? But it's because we've been a slave to their gross, enormous human rights violations that they got us to walk off. But an Israeli lawyer just assumed the chairmanship of that.
Yes.
So an Israeli is now the chairman, but yet the United States has no representation at all because we were doing so at Israel's bidding. We left it. It's ridiculous.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's so important that we who are aware of what's going on really reach out to people who are still plugged into, their TV sets and their entertainments. Although it does look to me like people are starting to wake up. I mean, that poll that shows young Americans are moving away from the Democratic Party tells me that, yeah, they're really starting to pay attention.
Well, Mike, honestly, in no small measure, this is you've got a market share of that. I mean, part of that positive move in the population, frankly, is yours. It's RBN's, but even more specifically, it's yours. So,
well, I would certainly hope so. I'd hate to think I wasted the last 25 years.
Hey, that's it for me, Mike, but thanks very much.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again. Speaking of Yemen, apparently Yemeni army soldiers and fighters from Allied Popular Committee killed and injured dozens of Saudi soldiers in the kingdom's southwestern border regions in June as part of their retaliatory raids against Riyadh. And so Yemen is proving that it can push across the border. It's fired missiles at Riyadh. Saudi Arabia may have bit off more than they can chew. I mean, look how long this has been going on. Now, the fight for Hodeidah is still going on. The UN is trying to find some way to get humanitarian aid into the country. But again, it's more UN hypocrisy because the UN wanted to take control of that port. The Yemeni people wanted the UN to take it over and keep it open for everybody. But that got voted down in the Security Council. Gee, I wonder who vetoed that. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is off to North Korea again, and now he's under the gun to produce some actual concrete results. And again, there are people in the corporate media, there are people certainly in the military-industrial complex who do not want these peace talks to succeed. They want a divided Korea. They want a state of war. They want to go on selling landmines and ammunition and all kinds of weapons to South Korea, which even if they're not being used, they get old, they wear out. So we know that there have been serious leaks of information trying to cast doubt on the possibility of peace in North Korea. So I imagine that a lot of this push, get some real results is coming from that group. So Pompeo is out there, and this is going to be his third trip to Pyongyang. And they're making it very clear there will not be any more direct summits between Trump and Kim Jong-un. Now, that being said, North and South Korea continue to signal a growing together. And I just happened to catch on TV the other day where a North Korean sports team was allowed to come to South Korea and play their counterparts down there. I think they were playing basketball. I mean, I just caught it real quick. But it's another good sign. And I think that Kim Jong-un is thinking that it might be okay to denuclearize. It's not like he wants to spend that money anymore. If he reunifies with South Korea. And South Korea's President Moon Jae-in has been a supporter of what's called the Sunshine Policy for many years. They want to reunify. China wants to run the One Belt, One Road down into South Korea's manufacturing districts. So that would be a good thing for the people of Korea. But you can count on some people inside our government who they want the wars. Wars keep nations divided, keep them under control, keep the people down and struggling, keep them helpless. That's really what it's all about. Using war to maintain power over everybody. Doesn't matter which side wins or loses. We get that not just from the government, we get it from the bankers. The bankers love wars. War is the bankers' richest harvest of debt. And they don't care which side wins or loses. They loan money to both sides to fight the war. And then when it's all over, they loan more money to both sides to rebuild from the war. And when it's all over, both sides have more or less what they had before the war began, except they're back in debt to the bankers for another 100 years. It is a scam. And the bankers keep getting away with it because ordinary people don't understand that wars are not about patriotism or glory or spreading democracy. It's all about making a buck. So as I mentioned in that phone call with Peter, apparently Trump reportedly, this is in Zero Hedge, reportedly asked a group of senior administration officials why the U.S. couldn't simply invade Venezuela during a meeting at the Oval Office. This is sourced from the New York Post. And the meeting was called initially to discuss sanctions against members of the Venezuelan regime. And apparently Trump just said, well, why don't we just go on in there? Now, this apparently shocked a lot of the people who were in the room, including former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. So that was way back, obviously, and now Trump was told by his aides not to mention his invasion suggestion during private dinner with leaders from 4 Latin American allies on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly because the word would spread. And he did it anyway. Trump raised the idea with Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos. So now Venezuela knows that Trump is thinking about invading them. And I got to tell you, that was a reckless, dumb thing to do, Mr. President. You may have been a great businessman, but you are clearly out of your depth in the world of politics and especially foreign policy. So we have the World Cup. Was a huge success. Everybody had fun. Even the commentators on TV were expressing surprise. Wow, this is really cool. We had fun. Russia's a great place. We really loved it here. So what are you going to do to erase all that positive publicity for Russia off the TV? you wheel out the Sergei Skripal story again. Just get it on out and say, oh yes, Novichok, Russia, Novichok, bad Russia, bad Russia. Forget about the World Cup, bad Russia, bad Russia. That's what's going on here. The big lie that will not die. And once again, we have this claim that this couple, after all these weeks and being told that rain would wash away the Novichok, they're miles away from where the Skripals were, and it's claimed that they were hit with Novichok. In the same article, it says samples have been sent to Porton Down, meaning they went with this claim of Novichok before they actually had anything to back it up. Now, this couple, one of them is a registered heroin addict. And when this couple were taken to the emergency room after being found, well, they were very, very sick. They weren't quite unconscious. The emergency room treated them for contaminated drugs, which apparently have been a big problem in Great Britain. They're not exactly getting the finest quality heroin and cocaine over there. And that's what they were treated for. That's what the doctors said affected them. And one more point, because the doctors were treating them for contaminated recreational drugs, they were not wearing any kind of isolation suits, which means if the couple really had been contaminated with Novichok, that emergency room crew would all be dead. It's just recycling a lie to try and give Russia another black eye in response to the World Cup. And I got to tell you how incredibly childish this all looks. Now, tomorrow is the start of Trump's tariff war against China, and China is saying they're going to reject U.S. blackmail. They're going to fight back. Little confusion over just when China's retaliatory tariffs would kick into effect because of the time zone difference here, but apparently they've worked it on out. And a Chinese government spokesman said Beijing will defend itself if U.S. President Donald Trump goes ahead Friday with plans to raise duties on Chinese goods in the escalating conflict over technology policy. And the Chinese government has already issued a list of U.S. goods for retaliation, but the Commerce Ministry says it will wait to see what Washington does. And they're out there being very scrutable, saying China will not bow in the face of threats and blackmail, nor will it be shaken in its resolve to defend global free trade. The issue is that so much of our economies are now tied up with that global free trade, is that a tariff war, by basically cooling global trade, will have a direct impact on our own internal economies, and not just from the increased price of goods that are coming from these tariffed countries. Now, China is apparently still pressing Europe to form a trade alliance, basically for the purpose of getting away from all this U.S. bullying. And they're meeting some resistance, but apparently they're also now starting to get some positive feedback saying, you know, this might not be such a bad idea. Because every time Europe goes along with a U.S. demand, it's followed by another demand. So, meanwhile, Trump has sent a warning to Angela Merkel. That's the big one, tariffs on cars. So in addition to a trade war with China, we are now looking at a trade war with Germany. And of course, Merkel has come back warning the U.S. against a trade war. This could really trigger a global recession. It's gone way, way, way too far. And our country, because of its debt load, is going to have a real hard time with a new recession, which a lot of people are saying is likely to hit right after the midterms. Of course, we know that in the run-up to the midterms, the Federal Reserve will pour all kinds of money out onto the country so everybody thinks everything is good and vote for the incumbents. And then after the election, they reel it back on in. Now, as you know, up in North Dakota, they have a state public bank that works very well for them. You don't hear about it. But now it looks like Los Angeles may go the same route. They're looking at a public bank for the city of Los Angeles. They're breaking from Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. Now, because of the city charter, the government of the city of Los Angeles is not allowed to engage in an enterprise without the consent of the voters. So there's going to have to be a referendum. But they're expecting that this would save the city millions, if not billions of dollars in Wall Street fees and interest paid to bondholders, as well as injecting new money into the local economy, generating jobs and expanding the tax base. It could also respond to the needs of its residents by reinvesting in low-income housing, critical infrastructure projects, and clean energy. And it would also serve as the repository for the cannabis industry. Now, this all sounds really good, and you can count on Wall Street and the Federal Reserve to do everything they can to keep this from happening. Because North Dakota, hardly anybody pays attention to North Dakota. We're all watching Los Angeles because of the immigration issue and its very obvious decline. If they put in a public bank and it works, you're going to see a hue and cry across the country for a return to public banking and an end to this private central bank scam, which was the reason we fought the American Revolution in the first place. Now, out in the American West, there are a lot of wildfires, and of course they're being exploited by the global warming people as proof. You know, it's just so hot, the temperatures are skyrocketing. It's actually snowing out there, but little detail. And they were giving a lot of coverage to these fires and everything. And then they discovered that one of the biggest fires, the Spring Fire in Colorado, had been deliberately set by an illegal alien. And all of a sudden, the network coverage went away. When agendas collide. We'll be right back.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. This product is superb. I have been taking it for about a year now, and I can feel my cardiovascular system run like a Swiss watch. I definitely recommend this product for anyone that has high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and heart palpitations, A+. It's potent, but it works. I have been waking up for the past 3 years with numb hands, and a week into using Extendivite, my numb hands seem to have cleared up. My circulation was off, and now it's back on track. So I'm happy. I feel so energized, and I have my husband on it now. My mother-in-law has cholesterol problems, so I bought her a bottle as well. Thank you so much. Love the product. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, coming up on hour number 2. Getting on over into Europe, there's a lot of tension building up there. There's starting to be this real pushback against the open borders, the Schengen, as regards the refugees. And Switzerland has now rejected new EU refugee resettlement demands. Apparently, they took in 1,500 migrants from Italy and Greece in an initial resettlement program in 2015. But now the Swiss government is saying that's enough. And saying that the EU has failed to meet certain prerequisites that were required for the resettlement. I assume that means some kind of financial compensation. Or something else, but it's really straining. It's starting to crack over here. Denmark is finally waking up and realizing it has a non-Western immigration problem. And early this week, the New York Times published a piece outlining some of the new laws the Danish Parliament has passed since the government, led by the center-right Venstre Party under Prime Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen, introduced a package of immigrant-related reforms in early March. And Denmark has now officially designated some urban areas as ghettos, areas that have dense population of immigrants with high rates of unemployment and increasing levels of violence and gang activity. In one of the country's worst ghettos, unemployment is 45%. 82% of the residents are from non-Western backgrounds. 53% have very little education. 51% are low income. So Denmark is trying to basically just corral them all up now. Up in Germany, Angela Merkel is clinging to power desperately, and she's come up with a new immigrant plan for Germany, which, for lack of a better name, we could call the NIMBY plan. NIMBY is an acronym for Not in My Backyard. And what she's trying to do is to assuage the people of Germany who are fed up with all the refugees by getting the refugees to go to other countries in the EU. The trick there is getting those other countries in the EU to accept the refugees when they themselves are struggling with this huge population. So, understandably, her new NIMBY proposals have not gone down well with the neighbors, and it may not work on out. But she's just desperate to hang on to power, desperate to prove to George Soros that she supports those open borders. Now, apparently, migrants in Germany sent nearly 16 billion pounds to their homelands in 2016. So it's not just the migrants who are there as a burden on the taxpayer, a burden on the infrastructure. They're actually taking money out of the German economy and sending it back home. We have that same problem here in the United States. where the illegals are sending cash back to their home countries. And it's bleeding our nation at a time when we can't afford it. All right, there's the music. We're going to take a break for station identification. And we'll be back with hour number 2 after these few words. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, over in Great Britain, there is this non-governmental organization called Citizens UK. It's funded by George Soros, and it's launched a campaign demanding the Home Office to extend the refugee resettlement scheme to every corner of Britain. And they're out there trying to sell this as we're going to show the world that Britain is a country of welcome. But what the goal really here is to disperse the refugees through the general population to make retrieval of them that much more difficult. And we've seen the same thing here in the United States of America, where the illegals come on over, the refugees come on in. They're literally getting bused to other parts of the country, because if they were kept in just one area, like Denmark is now starting to do, it would be rather easy to get them on a bus, take them back down to the border. So they're basically trying to blend in these people all over Great Britain. And again, this is George Soros trying to save his globalism project. Okay, we're going to take a phone call here. Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi. Hello, Mike. What a coincidence. I was calling in regards to Great Britain in World War II. I was watching a documentary, a movie, it's an old one, Fatherland. And in the beginning, it states that the D-Day failed and Hitler declared victory in Europe, not against America, in Europe. My question is this. You think Truman would have dropped the bomb on Germany also?
No, because Germany surrendered before we had a working bomb.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. But in regards to the movie, Fatherland.
Oh, you're saying if Hitler had just stopped and stayed in control of Europe and not botched it all with the Battle of Britain, would the U.S. have used the nuclear bomb on...
Exactly.
Yeah, I think they would. I mean, they were out there to prove... and the reason they dropped them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is they wanted to prove, first of all, that they had these horrible weapons and were actually willing to use them. So, yeah, I think probably it would have happened.
Against Germany. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here. Now, getting into the world of computers here, a lot of people were very, very concerned about the the new European Union copyright directive, which was written so broadly that it literally was a threat to memes, which is where people take a photo of something and they'll add a caption or they'll change it. And a lot of people were very concerned that it could end the internet as we've known it across Europe. Well, we can take a deep breath here because members of the European Parliament in Strasbourg rejected the copyright directive with 318 voting against, 278 in favor, and 31 abstaining. And apparently, the sticking point was Article 13 of the directive, which stated that online media would be liable if its users upload or publish unlicensed content, including photos, videos, source code, or music. According to the bill, such actions would require either that a license fee be paid, that the content be pre-filtered, or that it be automatically censored, all of which is very, very costly technology and plays to the existing large corporate social media, but would obviously make life difficult, if not impossible, for small websites like, for example, whatreallyhappened.com. Now, there's this researcher into computers, Ruben Santamarta, and about 4 years ago, he discovered that there were vulnerabilities in satellite equipment that could be abused to hijack and disrupt communication links to airplanes, ships, military operations, and industrial facilities. All that money they put into those communication satellites, and they didn't make them secure. Well, he's now demonstrated the findings, and working from the ground, was able to use a satellite to hack into in-flight airplanes. Now, he didn't do anything other than demonstrate that he was able to get into the SATCOM equipment and the Wi-Fi network, various other things. So, again here. There is a new virus out, and this one is kind of interesting because it combines cryptocurrency miner with ransomware, and the injection system actually analyzes your computer and makes a decision. Can I make more money off of this computer as a cryptocurrency miner, or can I make more money holding it for ransom? And then it decides which it's going to do. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Frank in Utah. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Frank in Utah. Are you?
I'm calling into your show. You know what? Hey, here's how I see this whole European and the United States thing going on. This is the destruction of the white race. Not that I'm a white nationalist or anything like that. But you start looking at commercials, you start looking at everything's biracial, right? And I really think they want a brown race to destroy, God's given people. We all have blessings in this life, and you know that just as well as I do. But you know what? My whole thinking here is, you know what? I'm sitting back watching commercials. It's black, white, it's brown, white. You know what? I just wanted to hear your opinion on this.
Well, my opinion on this is that the government is trying to basically fan up racial tension. They were doing it back in the 1960s with COINTELPRO to break up the anti-war movement. But the one thing they're most afraid of is that everybody unite together as a single American people and realize what the real cause of our problems are.
You're still not answering my question, though.
Well, I mean, we're being told...
You're really not answering my question. My question was, I'm not trying to be an ass here, but the question is, are they just trying to destroy the white race? And this is the most important question that every white man or woman should realize.
Okay, well, here's my answer. Here's my answer.
Okay.
Politicians are telling every single group out there that somebody is coming to get rid of them. The whites are being told they're under attack. The blacks are being told they're under attack. The gays are being told they're under attack. Now they're going to be screaming that a woman's right to choose is under attack. It's just a way to keep us divided and at each other's throat and fighting each other rather than fighting the government itself. All right, we're going to switch over to Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Okay, we lost Tony in Puerto Rico. I thought I'd already talked to him once. Okay, so, all right, phone lines are clear. And we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Okay, now, there is a new form of malware that can be used to distribute threats, including Trojans, ransomware, cryptocurrency mining software, and it's been updated with a new technique which has rarely been seen in the wild. It's a new way to steal your password and infect your PC. The attack vector is a spam email phishing campaign. This is called Smoke Loader, and it's been sporadically active since 2011, but has continually evolved. Somebody is working on this, and it's been really busy throughout 2018 with campaigns including the distribution of Smoke Loader via fake patches for the Meltdown and Spectre vulnerabilities, which emerged earlier this year. This malware thing is just so totally out of control. And like many other malware campaigns, the initial attack is conducted with a malicious Microsoft Word attachment, which tries to trick you into allowing macros, at which point Smoke Loader does what it's going to do. So if you have not disabled macros on your Microsoft Office, you need to do that. Or you need to go with an Office substitute that doesn't have macros. Alrighty, another phone call. John in Austin. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you just fine.
Good man. Listen, last Friday I got home just a few minutes after your show had started, and I think it was a rebroad, yeah? I was listening to
I don't think so. Oh, yes, last Friday was a rebroadcast. I had to take the day off.
I was listening to you interviewing a guy called Greg Felton.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a great interview, by the way, and I Googled him and I watched him give a presentation in a library up in Canada on YouTube. Now, as sometimes happens with me, if I'm watching something on YouTube, I look at what's coming up next. And there was a thing coming up by a guy in Britain who runs a thing called the UK Column. So I watched that, and he was giving a presentation about something called Common Purpose. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you mentioned George Soros a few moments ago. Now, you need to Google Common Purpose UK because it's too involved for me to try and explain it on a phone call like this. But you also mentioned Angela Merkel earlier on. Now, apparently, well, she was because I listened to it earlier, but Mother Teresa Mayhem was over in Germany talking to Angela Merkel earlier today and ramping up the anti-Russia rhetoric, yeah, about this latest Novichok attack in Britain, which is total BS.
Yes.
If you can track that down on Sky News, it's worth hearing this stupid woman and the garbage that's coming out of her mouth. But I would urge you to check out this Common Purpose thing because it spreads into the U.S. And I watched this guy over the weekend and the last few days. I've watched several videos in this, and I'm very, very concerned about it. It's like George Soros on heat. So you might find it interesting. All right?
Well, I'm looking at it right now, and they're talking about cross-border this and cross-border that. So it's just another part of his push for a one-world government and the dropping of borders.
Yeah.
And you know, it's amazing how much damage he has done with all that money that he's accumulated. And
yeah, but I don't think Soros is particularly involved with this common purpose UK thing. This goes into it's too it's too complicated for a simple man like me to explain. But I just find it very, very threatening to our way of life. And again, it's just another example of these people who think they have the right to rule the world and rule the roost over us, and they need to be found out and stopped, man. This is nonsense.
I agree. I absolutely agree here. Well, Soros is probably not directly involved in a lot of these NGOs. He just writes the checks. He finds people who share his ideology, and he has them set up these NGOs, and he writes the checks that pay for it all. Okay?
Yeah. Well, this particular one is a charity, actually, and it infiltrates the government, it infiltrates local councils, schools, you name it, everything to do with people's daily lives. And, of course, the one thing it does, it protects all the bloody pedophiles in Westminster.
That I would want to see some documentation on.
Well, I would urge you then to go to that UK Column News and watch a couple of this guy's presentations, because he lays it out in very simple terms.
All right. Well, after the radio show and after Aaron's, I'll take a look. Okay.
Okay, mate. Cheers.
All right. Thank you very much. The phone lines are now free. And getting on back to the news. As you know, the Supreme Court recently issued a decision to allow every state to tax the internet, and it's drawn a great deal of criticism, including this article from Armstrong Economics, which is saying that this taxing the internet is complete insanity. And one of the concerns being raised is that Illinois is basically bankrupt and is going to use taxes on the internet to try and pull itself on out. And what will be the likely outcome of that is that many small companies will simply refuse to do business with anyone who lives in Illinois, because it is simply going to become too expensive. From a business perspective, all you get are costs. You are not reimbursed for collecting their taxes. And if you make a mistake, there are huge fines. So this may backfire. There is also a concern that it may, in fact, actually violate the Commerce Clause. But it wouldn't be the first time the Supreme Court made a decision on the basis of revenue generation, which is what it's really all about. Despite the insanely high taxes Americans are paying, the country is broke and in debt. And the only thing government at every level can think of doing is find another way to take money from the people, which is a secondary aspect of the tariffs. Because when the tariffs are applied to products coming into the country, that money is collected by the U.S. government, and you have to pay that increase in price. So it's another hidden tax on you. Now, Chrome and Firefox have pulled this invasive browser extension following revelations it was phoning home with users' web surfing histories. And it was called Stylish, and it gained popularity because it let users configure sites' appearances rather than accepting the designer's decisions. I don't know why I'd want to go through that work, but who knows. But the code changed hands last year, and the new owners apparently enhanced its data slurping activities. And Chrome and Firefox have now pulled that. I want to make an observation here, and this is to people who visit the whatreallyhappened.com website. Over this last week, we had a problem where occasionally the website would come up saying page not found, and we finally traced it to a very badly written piece of ad code, which even worse, we didn't realize was taking our readers to an online gambling site, which we do not allow. There are certain products and services we will not advertise on what really happened. We will not advertise tobacco. We will not advertise alcohol. We will not advertise for porn sites, and we don't advertise for online gambling. So the ad has been pulled, and my relationship with them terminated. And so if you open up your browser and you get that page not found on the main page, empty your browser cache and reload it, and it should work just fine. In looking back, we seem to keep going through the same mistakes over and over again with computers. In the early days of computers, every computer had its own operating system, it had its own programming language, and it was basically a way where a computer hardware vendor would lock in a client. Once you were on their hardware, you had to stay with them, or you'd have to rewrite your applications all over again, your bookkeeping system, whatever it was you were working on. Then, of course, the Bell Labs came up with the Unix operating system, which struck fear and terror into the hearts of computer salesmen, because here was an operating system and a language that was identical no matter what machine it was put on. And it allowed for a huge explosion of software development. Most of the early software for computer animation was written on Unix and C. Then we moved to the browsers. There was a browser, and originally all browsers followed the same standards. And then Microsoft broke off and went their way. And now we have browsers, and it is becoming very, very difficult to write code that actually works on all the different browsers out there. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Many people write about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. My wife and I both use Extendivite and are very pleased with the results. It has helped to stabilize our blood pressure and to make both of us feel healthier. Good product and good buy. So far, so good. I've been taking Extendivite 3 times a day, only a short while now, but already I've noticed the circulation in my hands and feet improving. They tingle. I like the idea of taking something herbal rather than pills. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think this supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting Truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Robert in London. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I'd like to speak about the Amazon Echo for a moment, if I may.
Certainly.
In that last Friday or Saturday, I was happened to be watching RT, Russia Today, and I was not always I like to watch it, but I was letting it run because I was busy. And there's a program, Boom Bust, which I used to watch, but not anymore because I don't like the commentator particularly. But he was saying, "Oh yes, here's my friend. I'm interviewing my friend, and we're going to be talking about the Amazon.com. Jeff Bezos, he's the richest guy in the world. Amazon is so beautiful, it's fantastic, and it's got this fantastic product, Amazon Echo. It's really great. It's like I think they quoted $900 million maybe in turnover. Perhaps I'm not sure of the figures, but they say, "Oh yes, it's absolutely fantastic. This machine, it's great." And they purchased this company, Whole Foods, I think it is.
Yes.
And you can go in there and you can pick up an Amazon Echo, and you've got all the products there. And Amazon is such a smart company and such a fantastically beautiful looking machine, the Amazon Echo. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I consider it one of the most dangerous machines that you could ever buy. If you want to spend your money on whatever you want to spend, by all means. I have to say, if you want to buy it, you ought to get your head tested first. And if you want to share your personal life with every security company out there, and the CIA and everybody, then go out and buy it. But if you have any privacy you want to protect, you need to stay away. That's the only thing I can say. I just could not believe what I was watching on the TV, from RT Boom Bust program. I was just totally amazed that, I was flabbergasted. The Amazon Echo is such a dangerous machine, and apparently is doing so well in the sales. Well, what can you say? If you want to buy it, that is up to you entirely.
Well, I would never have one. I'm having to use Siri because of the electronics in our car. It literally requires Siri to be on to work, which is kind of weird.
Right.
But generally, I don't like those devices. I don't like being spied on. I'm a very private person. And it doesn't mean I've got something to hide. I'm just a private person. I reject that argument that if you're not doing anything wrong, then you shouldn't mind being spied on. Yeah, I should. I'm a private person. And unless you have a real good reason to be nosing around me, you have to mind your own business. That's what the Fourth Amendment's all about.
I agree with you entirely. I would only say that, actually, if I may just say, I went to some kind of poetry, intellect, what's the word, artificial intelligence poetry writing thing.
Okay.
And they were trying to talk about artificial intelligence and what it could do, etc. And they gave a demonstration with Siri, and I think they used Siri, yes, right. And first of all, they said, "Okay, Siri, what?" They asked a question, and it got back a very sort of simple. Please refer to the website, the WikiLeaks wiki website about whatever it was. That's just a dumb answer. So then they, in order to wake up the monitors, wake up the people who are listening to the series, the demonstrators started shouting sort of and swearing at the speaker, at the Siri, at their phone, trying to wake up the monitors so that they could come back and give some kind of intelligent response to a question. And I thought, this is just an example that you need to have monitored. It's a question of how intelligent is artificial intelligence. Well, it's just how far away are you being remotely
It's very
controlled?
clever. I mean, the self-learning aspect is very clever, but it's definitely in its infancy. There is a TV series that's out there on the cable channels, and it's called simply AI, not the movie by Steven Spielberg. This is a documentary, multi-part, sponsored by IBM. And they're talking about AI and its impact, and I've been watching it because of the debate into AI. And the one segment I've seen so far that I really did like was when they came in with an AI machine to play on Jeopardy against the top 2 Jeopardy players of all time, and the AI just swept him away. Now, I have to admit, I was very much impressed with that. Anyway, listen, Robert, we're coming up on a commercial break. I'm going to have to let you go, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective, and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath, Head to aroutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at aroutfitting.com.
Welcome to What Really Happened Radio. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. And now, set your eyes on the future and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here and getting on back to the news. Let's see. We actually reported that one yesterday. Excuse me a second. Okay. Now we're back. As you know, there was a U.S. District Judge, Gloria Navarro, who last January dismissed with prejudice the charges against Cliven Bundy, Ammon Bundy, Ryan Bundy, and Ryan Payne in connection with the April 14th, 2014 Bunkerville standoff near Bundy Ranch in Nevada. Now, the Bundys and their associates were basically trying to defend their rights to the land against the encroachment of the Bureau of Land Management, which has been getting very aggressive in grabbing other people's land. But apparently the federal government is not backing down. They don't want the Bundys out there going to meetings and conferences and talking about what happened. So federal prosecutors have asked her to reconsider her decision, led by the new U.S. attorney in Las Vegas, Davey Ellison, who was appointed by Jeff Sessions. And Navarro has denied the motion. And defense lawyers for the Bundys believe there will be an appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals by the prosecutors in the case. This one could go all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Now, speaking of the EPA, as you know, early today, Scott Pruitt turned in his resignation. He's got all kinds of scandals surrounding him. But one of the issues that people were very concerned about is the EPA's pesticide approval office is funded by the pesticide manufacturers and relies on their submitted data as science. Now, can you say conflict of interest? And this has actually become very common throughout the government. The FDA is another one. They do no actual studies or research of their own. Instead, they review the data provided to them by, in the case of EPA, the pesticide manufacturers, in the case of FDA, the drug manufacturers. It's a completely corrupted system. And EPA received a staggering 30% of their funding. EPA's Office of Pesticide Programs received 30% of their funding from the pesticide industry in 2016. So it's taking their money and it's rubber stamping whatever the pesticide manufacturer wants to put on the paper. Like glyphosate is perfectly safe. You could drink it like water. We found no evidence that glyphosate causes tumors in our rats, which we killed at 3 months. We know now from other studies, had the rats been allowed to live their full lifespans, the problems with glyphosate would have shown up. And in a mature republic with the government doing its job, the EPA would have run their own tests on the safety of glyphosate. And instead, they just took the money and said, okay, nice looking presentation. So let's talk about vaccines, because there's a lot going on over there. And every once in a while, I'm seeing Robert Kennedy Jr. try and break out of the media blackout with editorials and op-eds here and there. But he's really being subject to immediate repression. And I think he needs more of his own web presence if he's actually going to do some good here. But apparently, back in 1991, there was a study published by the United States government that revealed a link between the popular Tdap vaccine for tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis, which is called whooping cough, a link between that vaccine and microcephaly. And, of course, in recent years, authorities have been blaming that on the Zika virus. Because, after all, vaccines are harmless. They're perfectly safe here. But apparently there was a study back in 1991 that said, yes, this vaccine causes babies to be born with abnormally small heads. Now, the National Center for Biotechnology Information offered up clear evidence at the time showing that the combination jab can cause not only brain damage in young children, but also heart problems, meningitis, and epilepsy. Epidemiological evidence from human case studies showed that within weeks or even days of getting the Tdap shot, children developed infantile spasms and other common symptoms of microcephaly directly related to the vaccine. Now, back in 2016, the Supreme Court actually ruled vaccines are, quote, unavoidably unsafe, end quote. And for good reason. Thousands of children and their families are being compensated for injuries sustained from vaccine injections of known neurotoxins, and not enough research has been done to prove the safety of vaccines. Basically, imagine going to your doctor, and the doctor prescribes you a medication, and he says it's 100% safe and effective for everyone. And then later on you read that there were problems with the medication, settlements were being paid on out, and then you find out that the manufacturer of the drug had been paying your doctor under the table. Does that sound like an ethical system? Has anything been done about it? No. Not at all. Story coming out of the Daily Mail asking if the 2009 flu vaccine gave people narcolepsy. And experts are blaming the spike on the sleep disorder on the shot, which the United States has stockpiled for the next swine flu outbreak. And people were given in Europe, we got all these reports of narcolepsy in Europe, also with the Gardasil vaccine. People were given an adjuvant vaccine against the illness, meaning it contained ingredients intended to ramp up the body's immune responses to the flu exposure. Many people still got the flu. The vaccine didn't work. But scientists noticed a spike in cases of the rare sleep disorder narcolepsy following the pandemic. And now researchers believe the shot may have triggered an autoimmune disease that in turn caused narcolepsy, and are attempting to prove it before another swine flu pandemic heads for the U.S. and they dip into the current version of the stockpile. The state of Massachusetts is suing the maker of the prescription painkiller OxyContin, which is being blamed for spawning America's major opioid crisis. And the lawsuit names leading executives and members of the multimillionaire Sackler family that owned the pharmaceutical company. And the lawsuit accuses the company, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, of spinning a web of illegal deceit to fuel the deadly drug abuse crisis in order to boost profits. Now, Purdue Pharma is already defending lawsuits from several states and local governments, but Massachusetts is the first state to take the unusual step of personally naming the company's executives in the complaint. Yeah, I think the executives of these companies that put out these dangerous, unsafe, ineffective products ought to be publicly named and shamed. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is taking action against others who are contributing to the opioid prescription fraud, and they're calling it the biggest healthcare fraud crackdown in the nation's history. The Department of Justice, in conjunction with the Department of Health and Human Services, announced charges last week against a total of 601 defendants in an action against healthcare fraud. Among those charged were 76 doctors, 23 pharmacists, and 19 nurses who were implicated in prescribing or distributing either opioids or other narcotics. And they're basically abusing their patients because they've got dollar signs in their eyes here. Now, as you know, Donald Trump came on out with his American Patients First initiative earlier in this year and basically said what we already know. Prescription drug prices in this country are completely out of control. They're way out of step with the rest of the world. And he said he was going to work to bring those prescription drug prices down. Well, apparently America's pharmaceutical giants didn't get the memo. And Pfizer has hiked 100 drug prices despite Trump's promise of massive cuts. And the increases are effective they're effective now, July 1st. In most cases, the increases are just over 9%. And apparently every year there's a 10% price hike adopted by most drug companies. So it's all about the money, all about the money. Over in Oklahoma, Governor Fallin, along with the legislative leadership, have decided against calling a special session to implement State Question 788, which is the medical marijuana bill. And they're saying it's going to go into operation as the initial framework, and they don't feel they need to tamper with it anymore. There's a new phenomenon out there called Patients Without Borders and the rise of medical tourism. Well, it's not really a rise. It may be an increase, but this has actually been around for a long time, where Americans who cannot afford medical care in this country have discovered that they can go to other countries and get equally good medical care for much less money, and even calculating in the cost of the travel and the accommodations, it's still a tremendous savings. Now, people who live up near the border with Canada used to just drive across the border into Canada and get their prescriptions filled there, because the prescription drugs were a lot less expensive in Canada. Well, then the U.S. government passed a law making that illegal, on the theory that the Canadian pharmaceuticals might not be as safe and pure as the American pharmaceuticals, ignoring the fact that both the United States and Canada are having their drugs manufactured by the same pill factories over in Asia. People who live near the southern border of the United States have discovered they can drive over the border into Mexico and get dental work at way, way, way below what it costs here in the United States. And every time this starts to be an issue, you'll see all kinds of scare stories come on out in the corporate media about somebody who went down to Mexico and, oh my God, they ruined his face for life. It's going to be horrible. You need to stay in America and go to an American dentist, and yes, it'll cost you more money, but you'll be safe and sure. But that's what medical tourism is. And there are people in the United States who will go to other countries for treatments that are simply forbidden inside this country. Alternative treatments for things like diabetes or cancer, that there's a protectionist attitude surrounding the medical industrial complex. They don't want anything to really change. They want to refine what they're doing. They want to keep going along the same path. They don't need any revolutionary breakthroughs that would allow diseases to be cured at a low cost. That wrecks the business model here. Now, here's an interesting little development, and I'm not in favor of medicating students here, but there's a neurotransmitter called serotonin, and it mediates communications between brain cells and plays an essential role in functional and dysfunctional cognition. Now, for a long time, serotonin has been a major target of antidepressants, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, SSRIs. However, serotonin in humans and other animals is associated with a bewildering variety of aspects of cognition and decision making. There's the crux of the problem right there. If people who are on these antidepressants, their brains don't have enough serotonin, they cannot think clearly. So anyway, there's an article published in Nature Communications that says that data collected by the collaborators shows that serotonin speeds the ability to learn. Now, they did the experiment on mice, and they were conditioning them to do a behavior that would then reward them with a sip of water. And the mice who had the normal levels of serotonin did it at a certain speed, and the mice who had enhanced levels of serotonin did it much, much faster. And then they built a computer simulation of the action in the mice brain to confirm what they came up with here. Here's an article coming out of blogs, ac.uk. Evidence suggests the militarization of police forces leads to more civilian deaths. Well, we've certainly been seeing that in this country for a very, very long time. And they're asking, why do some police officers resort to lethal force so quickly? Why do they kill at all in situations where their lives don't seem to be in danger? And the militarization of American law enforcement has become the topic of a lot of discussion over the last several years. What's going on here? Is it the Israeli training that's doing this? Is it the fact that police officers are very high per capita users of these SSRI antidepressants, and therefore they can't think clearly? And following up on that, over in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, there was a 27-year-old man, Sean Williams, who was stopped by the police, and he did everything the cops said. He was sitting on the curb, followed all their directives, and they still tasered him in the back. And Sean Williams came on out and said, it wasn't racially motivated, they're just incompetent. They're not doing their job right. And there's an issue there. It's part of the fabric of our society, our civilization, starting to tear apart. I mean, this country today, I look around, and it's nothing at all like the country I grew up in. Everything needs a permit, everything's taxed, everything forbidden. You have to ask the government permission to do anything at all. You're being watched and surveilled all the time. Anyway, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Do you or someone you know suffer from chest pain, blood pressure, cholesterol, or irregular heartbeat? Are you looking for a more natural solution to overcome these health challenges? You hear the ads all the time. If this stuff's so good, why doesn't my doctor prescribe it? That's easy. Doctors are not trained in natural medicine. Extendivite Heart Tonic does want you to be as healthy as you can be, and it really works. Take Extendivite for 6 months and your doctor will say, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop. It's working for you. Get the dependability of Extendivite. Just see how you feel in 6 months. A 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid is only $69.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
If you are one of the millions of people who get migraines, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist who created MigraLief, the patented dietary supplement that addresses nutritional deficiencies in adults and children with migraines. Thousands of physicians and pharmacists recommend MigraLief.
Call 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Former FBI head James Comey is out there getting his moment in the sun. And during a recent interview, he's once again pushing for more gun control for us peasants, but not for the ruling class, obviously. And Comey made a very strange statement. He said that the NRA propagates lies in order to keep Americans armed against their rulers. Well, I don't think the NRA has to say much about the subject. Americans who are paying attention and awake know that the biggest danger to us all is that out-of-control federal government here. Now, we touched on this story briefly, I think almost a week ago, but I'm coming back to it now because it is an area of concern. And it has to do with farming, which we've taken for granted for as long as there's been civilization. But there is a new warning being sounded that the commercial farmers are destroying the topsoil. Now, it takes 1,000 years to generate 3 centimeters of topsoil. What do I mean by topsoils? It's not just sand and dirt and ground up minerals. It's decayed organic material which forms the nutrients the plants need to grow. And with the overuse of irrigation and chemicals, this stuff gets leached out and it goes down into the storm drain. And a senior UN official is now saying that the world's topsoil could be gone within 60 years. Now, this is coming from Maria Helena Samedo of the Food and Agriculture Organization. And the causes of soil destruction include chemical-heavy farming techniques, deforestation, which increases erosion, and of course she threw global warming in there as well. But the way they run those giant factory farms, good for profits, not very good for sustainability. And it's amazing when you hear all this talk about sustainability in terms of you living a more austere life. Nobody ever talks about sustainability for the corporations. They just dig up more raw materials, crank out this year's fashion must-have gizmo. When it breaks, it goes into a landfill, and they start the process all over again. It's very wasteful. And it's amazing that the same people who are constantly screaming about human-caused global warming don't take a look at the very obvious environmental, ecological damage being done by this constant planned obsolescence, rebuild the same thing over and over and over again to maximize profits. Meanwhile, over in Japan, TEPCO is getting ready to build more Fukushima-type nuclear reactors. It vows it will excel in safety this time. Well, that's what you said last time, except for that one power station in Onagawa, and that was a personal fight by the construction supervisor to get that one built properly. So maybe TEPCO will do a better job this time. Hopefully the money junkies won't say, we don't really need all these extra safety systems. I mean, anyway, we're going to take a break for station identification. We're going to be back with our guest today, Daisy Luther, after these few words.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, the history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 3. And joining us on Skype right now is Daisy Luther. And Daisy, thank you for spending time with us today.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here.
Well, why don't we start off by you sharing with our listeners your website, The Organic Prepper, what it does, and give us a little background on yourself.
Okay, well, my website, like you said, is theorganicprepper.com. I like to call it the official blog of the apocalypse because it just seems like bad things keep happening that we need to get prepared for. So that's a little bit about my website. I've got all sorts of articles on current events, on health, on preparedness in general, and some really great guest writers. I am a single mom. I live in Virginia with my 2 daughters and a whole bunch of cats, dogs, and chickens. And that's about it.
Well, it sounds really kind of good. How old are your kids?
They are 17 and 22.
They're past the fun stage. Anyway,
they are past the fun stage.
They're past the fun stage.
Expensive college stage.
Anyway, enough of this personal chit chat here. I wanted you on the show because I've posted many articles, or I've linked to many articles from The Organic Prepper. In fact, I just put up the main page on my page, whatreallyhappened.com, so that people can find it when they want to. But I think in our email discussion, we were talking about this very alarming decline in civility in political discourse, and what seems to be escalating toward actual outright violence, where we've had mutilated animals left on the doorsteps of ICE officials. We've had people just out with their families having dinner being harassed, Scott Pruitt being the most recent one. And apparently a poll showed that something like 30% of Americans are concerned there could actually be a new civil war in the streets of this country.
Well, you know, it's really getting more intense, I would say, by the week. ever since the last election, I've just watched things devolve so quickly. And, it seems like now we just know too much about each other. And maybe that's because of social media. Everybody shares their little memes that tell their opinions about their favorite politicians or their least favorite politicians, and we just start learning a little too much about the opinions of our neighbors. Now it seems like it is completely socially acceptable to attack someone either verbally or physically because they believe a little bit differently than you do. And if the things going on now against Trump supporters had gone on during the Obama administration against Obama supporters, all heck would have broken loose. That just never would have flown. And I find the hypocrisy and the double standard really ridiculous. Now, let me be absolutely clear. I'm not a huge Trump supporter, nor was I a huge Obama supporter. I'm a libertarian, and so I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. So I believe that I can kind of look at this with a little bit less bias than people who are just like wholeheartedly conservative or liberal. And I can say that the double standard is mind-boggling.
Well, it absolutely is. And again, when you have the liberal bias that is clearly in the corporate media, I'm sure the GOP understood how dangerous it would be to encourage their supporters to actually physically confront any of Obama's supporters. The inverse is now true, and even though the media is starting to cover these incidents, you can almost sense an undercurrent of, well, these guys really deserved it anyway, like we saw with Scott Pruitt. And you've got Maxine Waters, who's out there encouraging this along. She's refusing to apologize. She's out there saying no more good guy politics. And some of the other Democratic leadership are realizing she's damaging the brand. And their poll numbers are actually starting to go down. And they're trying to delink from her. But Maxine is still out there. Nancy Pelosi is still out there. Dianne Feinstein is still out there. And they're apparently being seen as the face of the Democratic Party, even though the Democrats would rather everybody was looking at this 27-year-old Alexandria, I'm blanking on the last part of her name, who just won.
The socialist chick.
Yeah, the upset victory. But at this point, that lack of civility, it does strike me as something that could very easily spin out of control. And were there to be rioting in the streets, it's hard to call it a civil war, because during the Civil War, there were clearly demarcated lines. If you were on this side of the line, you were the good guy. If you were on that side of the line, you were the bad guy. Today in our culture, it's all blended in, like that situation we had up in Portland that degenerated into a riot. It's everybody fighting everybody on the streets of America. And I can't understand why the Democrats would want to push that. But you've got Antifa is out there. They're apparently supported by George Soros. Black Lives Matter. And a lot of this is inherited from Hillary Clinton's political campaign in 2016, which, lacking any real substantive ideas to appeal to voters, was playing identity politics, race baiting, the feminist card, and literally was trying to stir up racial trouble to try and draw more black voters to support her. And again, she came very close to winning, but she lost. And immediately after that, all of her liberal snowflake types basically went on a rampage. They were trashing cities that had voted for Hillary. And it was really out of control. And you had to wonder, did somebody really think they were going to drive Trump out of the White House with all this violence and put Hillary in, even though she lost the election? But now that we're heading into the midterms, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, but they really did think that. I mean, they said that. They said, we're going to do this until Trump leaves office, and then Hillary Clinton can be president. I mean, clearly, they never took a civics lesson in high school. I don't think they teach civics in high school anymore, but they really do not understand how the United States government works. But they outwardly said they thought that they could pull Trump and get Clinton in office.
Well, they haven't succeeded yet, but again, we're starting to see an escalation of this kind of incivility and violence as we get closer and closer to the midterm elections this November. And it strikes me it's probably just as orchestrated in 2018 as it was in 2016, but it's also something that could spin out of control. Because everybody seems to be being primed, well, not everybody, but mostly over on the liberal Democratic side. It's almost like they're being primed to be violent as a response to anybody who doesn't go along with them, which, again, they don't really have a platform. They don't have an idea that is gaining traction with the voters. In fact, young white Americans, the millennials, are starting to swing over to the GOP right now.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I think our issue is that we are seeing a lot of extremism, and we're seeing it on both sides. I mean, you've got the alt-right neo-Nazi types, which I don't think they're really one and the same, but, they all get grouped in together.
Yes.
And then you have your extreme left-wing types. And, I mean, none of these people represent just like average Americans, the people who are in your neighborhood. These are the most extreme of each side of the platform. I mean, they're nowhere near the middle of the road, but because they do things that are so outrageous, they get the media coverage. And honestly, the media stirs the pot. The media loves this stuff. It really appears to be their goal to have us at each other's throats.
Yes, it does. It's just a divide and conquer kind of an approach. Again, I think with the drop in polls, the Democrats are realizing their chances of retaking the House in November are in serious jeopardy, which is why I think they're trying to flood as many illegals into this country as they can to then register them to vote and to vote Democratic, even though it is illegal for non-citizens to vote. But that seems to be a desperation ploy. But they are fanning up this tension, and I think they're going back to the 2016 playbook. Of just setting group against group, black against white, men against women, young against old, and basically coming out with this message about if you will support us, if you'll vote for us, we'll save you from those mean old people who are coming to harm you. And it's a
right.
Yeah.
You probably know who Selko is. He is
Yes.
a really prominent writer in the preparedness market. He's a friend of mine, and he writes articles for my website. And one of the articles he wrote talks about what was going on right before the Balkan Wars, which was really just like a giant civil war. It was, turning religion and nationality, which here it would be more like turning states against each other. And he said during the time right before that war, the media really made a point of making people hate and fear each other. And we're seeing the same thing here. We're being made to hate and fear people who are on the, quote, other side. We're not even seeing people as human beings and Americans. And I'm not saying everybody's like this, but a lot of people, the people who are the most outraged, aren't seeing the enemy as anything but the enemy. They're not seeing them as human beings and fellow Americans anymore. They are someone to be hated and feared.
Yes, and they're being dehumanized and, objectified to make that process easier. My question here is there actually some group that really wants unrestrained violence in the streets of America? I would certainly hope not, but it's hard to figure out just where this is all headed.
It is hard to figure out. There are a few different things we can think of. Every time something horrible happens, we get more rights taken away.
Yes.
For our own safety, quote unquote. That's how we got the TSA. Something horrible happened, and we ended up getting fondled every time we get on an airplane. So, it's obviously going to be a control kind of thing. There are going to be crackdowns because, we can't have the civil unrest in our streets. And, we're just going to start seeing more and more control as the government and the leaders try to get a hold of the situation that they probably created themselves.
Well, that's definitely one scenario where if there were nationwide riots, Trump could declare a national state of emergency, suspend the Constitution, and basically turn this place even further into a dictatorship. We didn't think Trump was that sort of a president, but he has been a bit of a disappointment since his election. We know that there have been past instances where they were trying to start nationwide riots over the shooting of the black kid by the white kid, Zimmer. Anyway.
Yeah, Zimmerman in Florida.
Yeah, the media was predicting there were going to be riots in every major city in America, and the government had to be ready to deal with it. And it didn't happen because I think people were starting to understand that's what the government wanted. And one of the things that I encourage people to do when they visit my website, I have an entire subsection devoted to the FBI's COINTELPRO program from the 1960s. And COINTELPRO, which stood for Counterintelligence Program, had absolutely nothing to do with fighting crime or fighting terror. It was all about violating the civil rights of American citizens, to block dissent, to derail and undermine several groups. The anti-war movement was very high on their list. They wanted to fan up the civil rights, the racism issue at a time when Martin Luther King was trying to bring everybody together. The FBI was trying to split them apart. They even went after the early feminists and the Native Americans. And fortunately, some very brave individuals broke into an FBI field office in the 1970s, and they got the documents, and they blew the whistle. And it was such a shock to the American people who, because of radio and rather TV shows and movies, didn't have that kind of an image of the FBI behaving like a Gestapo. Congress was forced to hold hearings and pass laws saying it would never happen again. Unfortunately, those laws have been rescinded, and we are seeing indications of the FBI's bad behavior yet again. So I'm hoping that if in fact starting some kind of a nationwide riot is the agenda, that Americans of all colors, all genders, all orientations are going to realize that's what's going on, and they'll just stay home and say, I'm not falling for this, I'm not getting in on this.
Right. That's exactly what I hope to see too. The problem is going to be when the trouble comes to your door, you've got no option but to defend yourself and to defend your family. And then, of course, everything's just going to escalate and continue to escalate because other people are going to jump in. And I mean, it's something that could easily fall apart. The FBI actually was just accused, you know how I'm just going to say this in quotes, stopped the bombing on the 4th of July in Cleveland and Philadelphia. They've just been accused yet again of setting that guy up, and basically encouraging him to do it and then arresting him for what they told him to do. And, you know, we've seen this happen over and over and over.
Yeah, it's a constant ongoing pattern. It's interesting as we see this brouhaha going down between Congress and the FBI and the Department of Justice, and we have all these people like Sessions, and the current FBI director coming on out, trying to get Michael Horowitz to tone down the IG report because we've got to protect the image of our nation's institutions, such as the Department of Justice and the FBI. But I think to most Americans, that it's way too late. We're seeing just how corrupt all of this is. We look back at Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and he's out there slapping around a bunch of opiate dealing drugs, which he should, but not involved in the immigration thing. No investigation of Hillary's email server. No investigation of the Clinton Foundation. He just gave a complete get-out-of-jail-free card to Imran Awan, who got this wrist slap plea deal for lying on, I think it was a loan application. That was it. And saying that there was no evidence that there was any spying going on inside the U.S. Capitol. And the document is provably wrong. There are at least 4 different reasons why it's a complete lie. It's like when Comey let Hillary off. You know, yes, here are the felony laws that she broke, but she didn't mean to do wrong, so we're we're going to recommend no charges, which, by the way, was not the FBI director's
outrageous.
job.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous. But, the interesting thing about that was the timing of his announcement that they were reopening the investigation. If you're a person who really believes that everybody's vote counts, that could definitely be something that people look at and say that was the turning point. And that was when Trump pulled ahead of Clinton.
Oh, there's no question that it definitely harmed Hillary, but it wasn't something Comey did deliberately. His hand was forced by the Southern District of New York because they had gotten Anthony Weiner's laptop, which had formerly been Huma Abedin's laptop, because of his little sexting crime. And on it, they had discovered all of these emails and classified documents, and they kept saying to FBI and Justice, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with this? And they kept getting a pushback, just sit on it. And finally, the prosecutors in the Southern District said, we are going public with this unless you do something now. So Comey's hand was forced on that.
And thank goodness he was, because I have to think that a Clinton presidency would be far, far worse than a Trump presidency. And I'm not absolutely delighted with the Trump presidency. So, that's really going far. But I think that we would already be at war if Hillary Clinton had been elected. And, oh my gosh, the gun laws that she would have tried to get passed, it would have been a nightmare.
Yes, it would have been a nightmare, along with, of course, 2 Supreme Court judges who are liberal rather than conservative. I worked very hard in 2016 to get Trump his current job, not because I was that enthusiastic about him, but because I saw Hillary Clinton as a danger to world peace and the future of the United States of America. Pardon me. And so he has unfortunately been a disappointment, and it's kind of amazing to see how Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein are still going after him, because so far he's given the War Party everything that they want. Anyway, we have to take a 3-minute break for commercials. We'll be right back here with Daisy Luther after these few words.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you one from Amazon.com. I just wanted you to know I saw my doctor and I laughed because he said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. I have been taking Extendivite. I had borderline high blood pressure, heart flutter, high cholesterol. I changed my diet and included Extendivite with an amazing turnaround for the better. A few months later, I had a doctor's appointment and took a stress test. I passed. No heart flutter, blood pressure was perfect. My doctor even took me off my medicine. I thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. This stuff works, and I'm so grateful for Extendivite. Thank you, Justin G. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? a voice of truth in a sea of lies, do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're talking with Daisy Luther, the webmaster of the organicprepper.com. There's a link to it from whatreallyhappened.com. And we're talking about, or at least we started talking about, the growing incivility and whether it is just the result of the frustrations of people who didn't get what they wanted in the 2016 election, or is it being specifically orchestrated and driven and organized to some other nefarious purpose? We know that past presidents have often talked about how much easier things would be if they were dictators. George Bush used to joke about that all the time. And if there were nationwide riots, then the door would be open to a declaration of a national emergency, suspension of what few remains of our rights, confiscate the guns, and so forth and so on. Which way do you think it's going? Is it just the liberals' inability to accept failure and accept their own mistakes? Or do you really think that there's something really just driving this incivility along? I mean, besides obviously Maxine Waters.
Right. Well, I think it's a combination of the two. There's a lot of people in the Democratic leadership and the liberal idealism that are encouraging others to resist and be incivil and call people out and ostracize them and embarrass them publicly if they disagree. And being embarrassed is probably the best case scenario because they're getting outright violent. There was a case just this past weekend where some guy went and grabbed a baseball cap along with a handful of hair off a boy's head when he was at a meal with his parents at Whataburger, and I think it was in Texas.
Yes.
Because he was wearing a MAGA hat. And I just, what? Like, who does that to a kid? That's just mind-blowing to me. And, I've read about people getting their tires slashed because they have a Trump bumper sticker on and, getting their cars damaged. I mean, this is really ridiculous that we have come to this point. Trump was elected just like Obama was elected, and there's really nothing you can do about that for 4 years. So there is, to a certain degree, you have to deal with it. And I really think that they haven't thought this through because the people who are so adamantly anti-Trump, if they did get him impeached, they would end up with Pence, who is even further from being able to accept the things that they want the president to accept than President Trump is. I mean, Pence is extremely, extremely pro-life. He is extremely, extremely anti-gay. It's just how he is. So I can't imagine that people have really thought through what getting Trump out of office would actually do.
Yeah, that's definitely it. And I've seen in a lot of places where they're still clinging to this idea that if Trump can be brought down, that somehow Hillary can be put back in. But that's not the way that it works. One of the things that we have been seeing coming out of liberalism of late, neoliberalism, if you will, is a sincere desire to believe that the world is very different from what it actually is, and then to be very angry with anybody who says that's not what's going on. The real world is actually a little bit different. And in some ways, it's almost become a cult and a religion. And you're right. Their actions, without thinking them through, definitely follows the hallmarks of being a dangerous cult. And I don't want to see a civil war in the streets of America. I don't want to see rioting in the streets of America. I'm absolutely convinced that the long-term destiny of our federal government is collapse like the former Soviet Union, and we're going to have to be ready to just sort of ride that out, which is why I pay a lot of attention to prepping websites. So it is a crazy time. I don't think since December, the December convention riots back in the 60s, that I've seen this kind of open hostility. And those December riots stayed at the convention center. They weren't spreading all across the country. But
yes, it's really getting widespread. The best thing that people can do who don't want to be involved in this is really, I know this is going to make me sound like Holly Hobbie with rainbows, is to start getting to know your neighbors and getting along with your neighbors, because it all starts at home. It doesn't start on some grand scale where, you know, you're reaching 90% of the country. It starts at home. It starts right in your own neighborhood, thinking about, you know, the people that your kids play soccer with and their parents and the people who live down the street. Oh, maybe somebody has a broken leg and you can go help them out by, you know, shoveling their snow. And these sound like really ridiculous, silly things.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'm absolutely in agreement with you on that. We need to start rebuilding our community connections now, and we're going to have to be prepared to take care of each other if, in fact, I am correct, and we're going to see a collapse of the central federal government. And the time to do it is now.
Right. You know, you've got to start seeing your fellow Americans as human beings, no matter what their race, religion, or culture is like.
Absolutely. Okay, Daisy, we got to take another break for commercials. This one's going to be 4 minutes long, and we'll be right back after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
About 6 months ago, my wife bought Extendivite. She didn't tell me she was giving it to me. So after about 3 days, I said, maybe the weather's changed or something. I said, my legs feel really good. And she goes, well, I've been giving you this stuff, and it was the Extendivite. And you know that I'm about 75% better. I can actually climb stairs now, and I can get up out of chairs. I can even get down and, I got to work under a table or a computer table and work on a computer. I can actually get back up off the floor. You know what? It's an amazing product. I didn't think anything short of having surgery was going to help.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. We'll plant them anywhere you like and blow up anyone. Whip this world into a frenzy, killing babies, dads, and moms. If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. If you got the money, well, we won't say we did. The towers in New York.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Daisy Luther, the webmaster of The Organic Prepper. We're talking about the rising incivility bordering on violence that seems to have become commonplace in our society. As Daisy points out, we're looking at extreme behavior on both ends of the political spectrum that doesn't really represent middle Americans, but the media is really focusing on that. And I'm looking at your website, and I'm looking at your opinion archives, and I'm seeing an article that you wrote on this. Is the media deliberately trying to spawn Civil War 2.0? And it's apparently had a lot of readers, a lot of comments here. What led you to write this article?
Just the things the headlines that I was seeing, for example. You see a lot of headlines out there that make things sound like huge majorities of the people are participating in these incivil acts and doing these, they're just stirring up how terrible the other side is. And, some of this I really think borders on propaganda, if it's not outright propaganda. I mean, I believe there's always a little bit of truth in the background of the stories, but it's really blown up to a point where people are beginning to hate and fear each other. And I mean, it kind of seems deliberate to me.
Well, all of a sudden, after decades of hate is bad and hate is wrong, and and hate crimes legislation, and now all of a sudden hate is becoming fashionable. And I'm looking at some of the information that you put in here about attacks on people, and it's not just attacks at restaurants. We've seen people drive into crowds of protesters. We've seen there was a flashbang grenade used at one of these Antifa versus pro-Trump protests. Apparently, a lot of cyber stalking, cyberbullying going on, and our nation has lost its moral compass, or to be more accurate, it's been stolen away from us. And I agree. Right. We are being encouraged to basically lose that moral high ground, and we're becoming barbaric, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely we are. Except now our weapons are a little bit different. The weapons now, people are doxing each other and putting all their public or their private information out there in public and finding photographs of them in compromising positions. And, like doxing, that is a horrible thing to do to anyone. Putting people's home addresses and the addresses of their family members, that's a horrible thing to do. And yet it's not punished at all. It's not considered a criminal act. It's considered kind of heinous by some people, but it's not considered criminal. And there was a professor at NYU who was proclaimed a hero by Antifa for doxing ICE employees and posting their home addresses online. Like, that is nothing more than a call for violence.
Well, that appears to be true, because that may have been how these people who knew where this ICE official lived to dump this mutilated carcass of an animal on his front porch. We have a caller on the line who's got a question for you. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. What do you have for Daisy?
Hi, Dustin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm in New Jersey. I'm behind enemy lines. Hey, I was wondering, what do you think about it's the same thing going on in Europe? Do you think this is a decline of the Western Empire? You know what I mean? Like, just it's decadence, and it's just nobody's getting along. It's just part of the process of a dead empire.
It really does seem that way, doesn't it? Because we're seeing a big reflection, a lot of the same things happening. Maybe we're not quite as far down the road in some ways as Europe, and maybe in some ways we're further. But, Europe is seeing a lot of trouble with a huge influx of immigrants, like a dangerous influx of immigrants. And, we're beginning to see the problems with that if we're watching it over there in Europe. A lot of people here want to deny that that's happening. But yeah, it does seem to be a Western society kind of thing.
Well, it's all being driven by the globalists who want to knock down all the borders. And as a matter of fact, if you listen to the rhetoric coming out of the liberals today, they're out there saying there should be no borders. Everybody should be allowed to come in here. They're demanding that there be no more private business, and everything is under central economic control of the government. Well, when I was a kid, that was called communism. And
yes.
Again, if we're linking this loss of civility to the push for a one world government, then it definitely is something that is being orchestrated and funded and paid for.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's because we're seeing the whole thing happening over and over again in all these different countries. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it is just a bit of a grand plot. I mean, I hate to sound like, this wild-eyed conspiracy theorist, but if the shoe fits or the tinfoil hat fits, sometimes you got to wear it. There's an essay by Sir John Glubb called The Fate of Empires and the Search for Survival. It's only 24 pages, so it's a good thing to read. And he wrote this work when he was 79, after he had been a soldier and traveled the world and analyzed history. And the final stage of any empire is the age of decadence. Some signs of this are political dissension, so Antifa, and all the things that are going on now, an influx of foreigners, the welfare state, despair. Think about all the different people who are diagnosed with depression. I think it's like 300 million people just in the United States. Depravity,
that's almost the entire
rise of
population.
frivolity. It's insane, right? But that essay was written 40 years ago, and it's like it was a prophecy. You should really read it.
I have read it, and I agree with it absolutely, that all nations go through a life cycle, and we seem to be nearing the end of ours, which is why I really do think we're going to see a Soviet Union-style collapse of our government, probably triggered by an economic correction, to use the polite word.
Yes.
I want to throw in, remember, Antifa's worldwide. I think they're called Black Bloc, right? In Europe?
Yes.
I believe so.
And I just want to say, in terms of George Soros, he's part of the ringleader because he's worldwide. I mean, he's one of the instigators, but he's just one small part of the big puzzle. It's just sad what we're, like you said, the last stage is decadence. That would be the bread and circuses stage, which you see on the TV screen and on the street, pretty much. So
yeah.
That's all I got to say.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we're in that final stage here, and no nation lasts forever. I mean, China's done amazing. For being around for 2,000 years, until you realize it's actually had to reinvent itself several times. The China of today is not the China of 2,000 years ago. Thomas Jefferson, when he first kicked off the United States, he said it was only going to last 100 years before corruption and rot would make it unusable. And so we've made it 242 years, which is pretty good. But again, all governments have life cycles, and they go through that cycle of birth and growth. Then they get complacent. Then they get dependent on the government. We've already been there for a very long time. Out of that dependency comes tyranny, And then you get into the final stages of despair, opening the borders, bringing in people to vote in the elections, which is what they're doing, trying to just drag more wealth into this country somehow because we're so hopelessly in debt. And everybody along the way in the government knew what they were doing when they did it. When they created the Federal Reserve, they knew it was in the long run going to be bad for the nation, but hey, they were going to get their goodies right then and there. And a big failure, I think, of people who go into politics, aside from the fact that they're pretty much self-serving, greedy sociopaths, is they never really do think long term. It's always the next election, the next stockholders meeting. What do I do that gets me what I want now? More money, an intern, so forth. And they really don't think what's going to be happening in 100, 200 years based on what they're doing, because they figure it's not their problem. They're going to be out of office. Yeah. They're going to be dead.
Well, this is very true. And the thing that I just want to remind people of, because this sounds really gloomy and really apocalyptic and dystopian, but people are going to survive this. You know, this isn't the end of the world. This isn't the great meteor or anything like that. And it is definitely something that is survivable if you have a survival mindset. Yes. And, you know, that's the thing that people really need to be focusing on now, is that survival mindset. What can you do for yourself? How can you be independent? How can you be self-reliant? Because that is what's going to see you and your family through this and anything else that's going to come our way.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. And again, it's not doom and gloom, and it's not the asteroid killing the dinosaurs, because the model I like to use again is the former Soviet Union. And conditions in the former Soviet Union before its collapse were really, really terrible. And then it all came apart. And there was a short period while the Russian republics organized, but life today in the Russian republics is a lot better. And so we're going to have to go through some tough times. We're going to have to be prepared for the tough times. But on the far side, there's going to be a better world for our children and grandchildren to live in.
Right. The answer to that, though, is we just have to pay attention, and we have to know what we want. We have to know what we want to avoid to make that better future for our children and grandchildren.
Well, that's a big part of what we're
watching this stuff.
Yeah, that's a big part of what we talk about over at whatreallyhappened.com. I mean, my number one agenda for whatever country we set up on this land is no more private central banking, because that is the root of all the evils that are bringing down so many nations across the globe.
Amen. You for president.
I actually tried running in 2016 under the slogan, "He could hardly do any worse." And I may have to dust that off for 2020.
You may have to.
I mean, actually, I've been approached about being the vice presidential candidate for the Wild Party.
I didn't even know there was a Wild Party.
Neither did I until
awesome.
neither did I until they said it. But apparently, they're going to run a campaign in 2020, and they want me as their vice president.
Well, you go. I can say I talked to you when.
Yep, I think it's a joke.
Awesome.
I think it's another joke, but. Yes, I'll go on in. Yes, I'll be president of the vice.
And you know, I just have to say something about presidential elections. This last one, I mean, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people really like President Trump, but I felt like it was a choice between herpes and gonorrhea. And, you know, do you want the one that you have for life or the one that makes you go insane? And, you know, can't we do better than that? Shouldn't the president be like the best two people our country has to offer instead of the lesser of two evils? The lesser of two evils makes me want to pull my hair out.
And it's a stupid way to run a country, because the lesser of two evils is still evil. The issue is that power corrupts, and, you know, Trump is not the man that we saw campaigning, but then they seldom are. And, you know, he did ignite the imagination of America. First of all, with talk about putting Hillary Clinton in jail, which has not happened. He promised he was going to get out of the wars, but then so did Obama. He promised he was going to look into vaccine safety. That's apparently on a back burner. And one of the most important ones, he was going to look into the issue about whether our elections were really honest or not. And for some reason, he closed down his Election Integrity Commission and turned it all over to the Department of Homeland Security. That to me, unless he's already decided he's only going to be a one-term president, that guarantees he's going to lose in 2020. And I'll tell you what we really need, and I wish we could get it before November. We need a national voter ID law. And the majority of Americans say we should have a voter ID law, that we cannot allow people to vote who are not entitled to vote here. And, of course, you have all the open borders people out there screaming, oh, you're just being racist again. You're being racist. No, I'm not being racist. Illegal is not a race.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm not saying Trump is the Antichrist. I mean, I don't hate the guy. I just think that we do have better people in the United States than we have put in office in the last, since I've been alive.
The machine never allows them to get close. I mean, by the time we go to the voting booths, the list of candidates is narrowed down to the corporate-approved, corrupted, will always serve Israel pre-selection for us. And I think the Democrats pretty much established in 2016, we're not even allowed to pick our own candidates anymore. I mean, they rigged that primary against Bernie Sanders. If Sanders had won against Hillary, I might have supported him over Trump.
I wouldn't have, because he's a socialist, and I just can't support that ideology. I don't think he's.
Have you seen his new house? It's hard to think of this guy as a socialist when he's got this huge, expensive house. I mean, where's the socialism on his sleeve? Or he's one of these socialists who wants everybody else to be socialist, but he wants a big pile of money.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a socialist for the rest of us.
Yes.
Okay,
so did we lose Dustin? Is he still there? Oh, we have another caller on the line. Larry in Washington. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, have you ever read Nestor Webster's World Revolution?
No, I have not.
Well, what is happening here to America looks to me to be about the same thing that she said during the French Revolution, that we are basically going into it because there is a gay group now called Walkout.
They're not just gay. It was started by a gay guy, but it's gone viral. It's across the whole spectrum: gays, straights, men, women, young, old, and it's really taking off. And that's why the Democrats are so nervous.
I know, but in the world, in France during their revolution, when they followed basically behind us, that it was everybody was included in this thing at first, but afterwards they started murdering their own, the old cliche of sharks eating sharks.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't one revolution. It was actually a series of revolutions from 1793 to 1808, and the later revolutions turned on the earlier revolution leaders. Anyway, listen, Larry, got to let you go. Got to take another 3-minute break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of today's program after these few words.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective, and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, A visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. We're still talking with Daisy Luther, the webmaster of The Organic Prepper. And we're talking about the civility problem in this country, where it's almost like we're being encouraged to be less communicative, less rational, and more violent. You had Robert Creamers admitted organizing violence against Trump supporters. Loretta Lynch was encouraging people to take to the streets. Remember, Eric Holder's Justice Department literally imported rioters in the Trayvon Martin affair. And then you have George Soros, who's funding Black Lives Matter and Antifa. So I'm starting to swing over to the idea that this isn't just a social phenomenon, that it is in fact being engineered.
Yeah, it really sure does seem that way. I guess the big message that I want to leave everybody with tonight is that we have to just take responsibility for ourselves and our own actions in this. We can't get sucked into the hatred and the fighting and, the inhumanity that we're seeing. At the same time, we have to be prepared to protect ourselves and our families and our homes. Because, as things escalate, violence could come to your door.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue, and a lot of our show's listeners are preppers. I'm sure they're going to be looking at your website for other things they might be listening. But you remember the first rule of preppers, right?
Cardio.
No,
wait,
you don't talk about being a prepper, because that sets you up as a target when things go south. And
exactly.
You know how you can tell a prepper, right?
No, how?
They're the ones not eating out of the trash dumpsters after a flood or other natural disaster.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And, there are so many things that you can do to get prepared for civil unrest. I mean, civil unrest can happen anywhere. Ferguson was a town of like 21,000 people. Ferguson was not the big city. So that should tell all of us that it can happen anywhere. If there is an outrage or a perceived outrage, civil unrest can come to your door. And a lot of the people participating in civil unrest aren't even from your town. they get bussed in
Yes.
to, make it look even worse. So it's important to be prepared to hunker down in situations like this, or to get the heck out of Dodge, because really, if people are rioting outside your house, being there and trying to defend your home against a giant mob, I mean, it's not the best idea, especially if you have vulnerable family members. If you've got children or something like that, really getting out of town in a situation like that is your best bet. And that's not being cowardly. That's being sensible. That's protecting your kids.
So it's always important to have one little bag that's already packed that you can throw in the back of your car, a bailout bag.
Yep, and a full tank of gas. You should always have a full tank, or at least 3/4 of a tank. I try not to let my car get less than 3/4.
That's exactly what we do here as well, especially since our ballistic missile warning and our volcano and our flood. Anyway, there's the music. It's the end of the show. And Daisy Luther, thank you for spending time with us and sharing the information. Once again, her website, theorganicprepper.com. And there's a link from my website to her website. So check it on out. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got a lot of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with others. We've got to get the word out before this situation deteriorates any further. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.